Not sure where and when it started, but at some point, carcinization became a somewhat popular term, at least on the internet. Though, as with many things spread around by the public, some misunderstandings do spread with it. Carcinization is not animals becoming crab. It's animals becoming crab-like, not crab itself. But still, that is not the topic of this video. I want to talk about a somewhat rare occasion where a true crab shies away from looking like a crab. Well, not literally, but yeah, just look at this image. This is a frog crab, which should already be written on the title, but just in case I forgot to change the title or you simply didn't look at the title. But still, let me bring up the question. What exactly is frog crab? So, like I said earlier, frog crabs are true crabs, which means they are brachiosaurs, and that is an infraorder. In the phylum Arthropoda, class Malacostraca, order Decapoda, and suborder Pleochiemata. Quite a deep dive, isn't it? But yeah, arthropods are simply that diverse. But anyway, frog crabs belong to the Raninoidea superfamily, and generally in the Raninidae family. So, when we're talking about true crabs that is brachioran, they usually have folded abdomen. The abdomen curled below them, so when you are looking at them from the top, you cannot see the abdomen. You could do so if you flip them, of course. However, that is not the case for the frog crabs. You could clearly see their abdomen right here. In terms of shape, they somewhat resemble mole crabs, which are not true crabs by the way. Those are closer to the hermit crabs than to true crabs. Hermit crabs and mole crabs are anomurads, an entirely different infraorder, though still related to the brachiosaurs. One of the easiest ways to differentiate these two groups is by counting the legs. If you could only see 4 pairs of legs, including the pincer by the way, if they have any, that is most likely an anomuran. If you could see 5 pairs, that is most likely a brachioran. I say it most likely because, well, some brachiorans do have reduced pair of legs, which make it look like they only have 4 pairs. But yeah, you could use that general rules and apply it to differentiate frog crabs and mole crabs. Frog crabs look like they have 5 pairs of legs, while mole crabs look like they have 4 pairs. Still, some frog crabs have reduced pair of legs, like the Lyraidus for example. But if you take a closer look, you could still see the 5th pair of legs, albeit smaller than the rest. Though, Worms doesn't list Lyraidus as members of the Raninidae family. They are listed in their own family instead. But still, they are quite similar and at the very least, still belong in the same superfamily. So yeah, still considered frog crabs. Oh, by the way, Rana means frog, and Ranina, which is the name bearer of the whole group, basically means frog-like. They are named that way because their gait looks like the typical frog's gait. And yeah, I definitely could see the vision. Oh, by the way, they are quite diverse. There are 13 phylogenera that currently exist in the wild. 2 belongs to the Lyraididae family, meanwhile 11 of those belong to the Raninidae family. One of those is a relatively new genus, Flaberina, described in 2020 in this publication. So yeah, quite diverse and might even be more diverse than we thought. In general, they can be found in the tropical ocean. While mole crabs can mostly be found on the swath zone of the beach itself, frog crabs typically exist underwater. They can even be found deep down, reaching 900 meters depth, which is why the general public don't really have that much chance of encountering them, which is also why their observation data in this image is scarce, especially compared to mole crabs. Oh, by the way, the first described frog crab is Ranina ranina, which is also commonly known as spanner crab, especially in Australia. If you live in this general area, you might be able to stumble upon some in the fish market. I could do so where I live at least. Some articles stated they taste sweet and delicate, hence people love them. I've never tried them though, so can't really say anything about it. But anyway, let's get back to zoology, starting with their morphology. But before that, because frog crabs are somewhat diverse, there is a decent amount of variation on their morphology. They can be quite small, only around 2 to 3 centimeters long. However, some of them are significantly bigger than the rest. For example, the spanner crabs that I showed earlier can reach around 15 centimeters long. Of course, that's nothing compared to the biggest true crab, which could reach 4 meters long. But hey, 15 centimeters is over 5 times bigger than 2 to 3 centimeters long. Oh, and also, males are typically bigger than females. Not only that though, their chelae, their pincers, are also bigger than those of females. Unfortunately, I cannot find an image that compares them side by side though. Like I said earlier, you could see their abdomen from the top. However, their abdomen is typically still slightly curved to the point that you typically couldn't see the full extent of it from the top. In this image, you could see they have 6 somites and a telson on the tip. But in a lot of images, you could only see like the first 2 or 3 somites most likely. Unlike most true crabs, they are quite narrow. Some groups have wide carapace, especially towards the front, but some are relatively narrow, like mole crab's carapace. Still, even the ones with a relatively wide carapace looks narrow, especially compared to most true crabs. What's also quite distinct are their legs. Unlike most crabs that have pointy walking legs, basically all of frog crabs' legs are flattened on the tip, somewhat resembling the swimming legs of swimmer crabs, but still somewhat sharp. You know, like a spade basically. Although some of them have intricate looking legs that doesn't exactly fit my spade parallel, but still flattened and somewhat sharp in general. So yeah, some of them have prickly shell, while some have a relatively smooth one. Some have hairy legs, while some don't. So yeah, like I said, decent amount of variation. Oh, and also, like some crustaceans, they can extend their ocular peduncle. That is their eye stalk, by the way, which is why you would see them having long and prominent eyes in some images, while not that noticeable in other images. Not to be confused with their antennae though, because they do have that. Naturally, all of these unique morphological traits correlate to their ecology. So let's talk about that. So, the reason why they look similar to the mole crab is because their behavior is somewhat similar. And what behavior that is? Burrowing. The reason why their legs are like that is because it helps in burrowing. The reason why they are narrow, with those accessories on their shell, is to help them when burrowing, and also quite neat for camouflage. The reason why their ocular peduncle can extend is so that when they burrow, they can still look around, even though their body is covered with sediments. And yeah, they spend a lot of their time burrowing, hiding from predators and also ambushing prey. They are noted to be generalists, eating whatever they could get. Oh, and by the way, unlike most true crabs, they don't move sideways. They typically move forward, skittering around on the bottom. They could also move backwards, by the way, but unlike the mole crabs, frog crabs cannot sprint backwards that quickly. Oh, and also, frog crabs could swim, but they typically do so in a leaping kind of movement. So yeah, like I said, they typically stay near the bottom. There are several publications on the reproduction, but most of them are observations on Ranina ranina. At least in Ranina ranina, gonad activity occurred throughout the year, but peak breeding activity is typically around November to January. Like most crustacean, female carries the eggs until they hatch. Female can carry hundreds of thousands of eggs. Some articles stated they carry orange-colored eggs. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any image that shows ovigerous female. And yeah, I just want to make it clear that we mostly know them through Ranina ranina. Other species will definitely have a different reproductive ecology, no matter how big the difference is. There are some debates surrounding their evolution. Some people think they are quite primitive among the true crabs, hence they haven't reached the quote-unquote modern crab form. However, the oldest fossil of Raninoidea dates back to the Albian, which is around 100 million years ago. Meanwhile, fossils with typical true crab form that we are familiar with dates back to 200 million years ago even, which could indicate frog crabs' morphology is an evolved trait, an adaptation to their habit. But of course, more fossils could be discovered in the future that could change our perspective. But fossils are not the only thing that we could find, right? We are missing a lot of data on a lot of species. Tons of stuff's yet to be observed. But for now, let's just learn what is known. And that's all for now. Actually, hold on a second. I remember something interesting. When I showed a ranina to my friend quite a while ago, my friend said they look like a louse. And I was like, what? How could you even say that? But when you don't know which side is the head, some people might think so. And now I just want to show you that vision. See? It kinda do. Looks like a louse. Knowing which side is the head could be significant when observing an animal, huh? Reminds me of the hallucigenia tale. Anyway, enjoy your day.